Right, welcome to the HIGHERWAY podcast, and we've got a guest in who we've had on before, not so long ago. It's my old pal, Chief Instructor for Wales, Justin Reeks. Hiya, Justin. How are you doing, mate?
Hiya, Bob. How's it going? We're back again.
Yeah, I'm good. We've just been chatting before we started recording this about what we were going to talk about, and we talked about so much stuff. I thought, we're not going to get all this. We're going to forget it. So, because we're both men of I'm certainly a man of a certain age, and you're not far behind. You know, you're about 15 years behind me, aren't you? Something like that.
What old as dirt now. I've reached the age where I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and I can't start. You know,
what's breakfast? I mean, what time is it? So, yeah, we were just chatting a second ago before I hit that record button, and we were talking about the fight game and how you feel just as proud when you've coached guys as you do when you're fighting yourself. You know, the excitement and the passion is still behind it. And we talked about some of the champions you personally trained and developed. And we were talking about one specific guy. Should we talk about that again? Let's start that, and let's start the podcast with that.
With Ian Tompkinson.
Ian Tompkinson. I remember him as well. Proper strong little lad.
He was a tremendous talent.
Yeah.
Again, he came to me with no Thai background. He'd done a bit of karate, and he was just one of them natural athletes. And fair play, he trained with me probably 4 or 5 times a week for 3.5 years before he won his first belt, but he was straight in the deep end. I can't remember his opponent, but anyway, he actually lifted a Five Nations title. You know, he done really, really well. Fought a boy up in London. I can't think of the guy's name. Guy from Liverpool.
Well, he probably battered him so much that kid's probably forgotten his own name.
But he was a tremendous, tremendous athlete, and his commitment was unbelievable. Whereas some fighters, you've got to get them to the gym. You've got to, sometimes wet nurse them. With him, sometimes it's like, no, stay home. It's a day off. You know, as a fighter, rest is just as important as training hard.
Yeah, yeah. It's very rare to get that in a potential fighter.
I had it twice with Paul Martin and Ian Tompkinson.
Yeah.
Both of them, you had to sit on them, stop training, ease up. Right, it's 2 weeks out now. We're starting to tone the training down. Week out, I'd catch him out running. Stop the car, get in the car. Come on, you're going home. It was absolutely madness. But like I said, out of all the people I've coached and met twice, lightning has struck twice. It's such a rare fish. But like I said, he a Five Nations title holder and defended it twice. And watching him lift that title meant more to me than my own achievements.
When you're coaching a fighter, so we'll use Ian as an example, because you're not going to do it differently with anybody else, are you? It's going to be more or less the same process, fine-tuned to suit that individual skills, I guess.
Yeah.
So if they're good kickers, you're going to focus on that, aren't you? And if they're good at clinch, then that's going to be most of your focus. I think we agree on that.
Yeah.
So what's the sort of typical routine you would have? Because obviously in Thailand, just so in case people don't know, normally it's a job. You get up in the morning, you're already in the camp. That's where you live. You're up at 5:30 in the morning. You go for your 7K run. You train for 3 hours. You have a short break. You get something to eat. Maybe have a little sleep. Back in the afternoon, another 3 hours. And that happens 6 days a week, right? Week in, week out. And you're usually jumping in that gym and in the ring from about the age of 10, maybe even younger. However, in the West, it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah. They got the luxury of 6 hours a day to train. So in Thailand, when I trained out there myself, I found it was repetition. Now, in the Western world, you're lucky if you can get someone to commit for 2 hours a night. And I've noticed that over the years, whereas it used to be, we'd turn up at the gym, you go for your run, then you'd be in the gym for 2 hours. Now you're turning up, you're doing your run, and then you're in the gym for an hour and a half. And sometimes you're in the gym for an hour. It's becoming, people's lives are, cluttered now and just so busy. To get that level of commitment, it's so difficult nowadays. So yeah, so our lessons tend to be a little bit more intense. You get 2 hours, you try to cram as much as you can into 2 hours, but then you've got to rely on the boxer to be doing their fitness training and their strength and stamina training on their days off, or, you know, so you can focus solely on the Thai, on the techniques. Like you said, you will get their 6 best and strongest techniques, and you will drill them and drill them and drill them until they're absolutely fluid. So in any pressure situation in the ring, if they're half unconscious, you know, you will shout this command and they will be able to execute it because they've done it in their sleep, you know. It's almost ingrained in them. You know, it's almost like a sleepwalker.
Yeah. And how important stamina then in all of this?
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, 22 pro fights myself and coached. I mean, at one point we had 12 fighters. We had 4 champions in Cwmbran. And I'm obviously in reffing the game and judging it as well. You get to see a lot of fights. And the amount of fights, you know, that are lost in the first round because a boxer's punched himself out. You know, fights aren't necessarily won in the first round, but they can be lost in the first round. You know, when you see the fight and you see round 2, round 3, and you're thinking that this guy is just, and the other fighter is coming on stronger and stronger, and you just know this fight is going to end in round 4 or 5 because the one fighter doesn't have the stamina to do 5 rounds.
Oh, you see this all the time. It very rarely happens in Thailand because of, like we say, the intensity of the training. I mean, you're learning to pace yourself in Thailand as well.
Absolutely.
During training. Because that's another thing, isn't it? You've got to train the fighter to treat it like a marathon and not a sprint.
Well, as the Thai said to me, you don't want to be a sprinter because you'll burn out. You don't want to be a 100-meter sprinter because you'll burn out too quick. You don't want to be a marathon runner because you lose a bit of that explosion, that what they call spit. But you want to be a 400, they said this, a 400-meter runner. This is way before the sports science comes in and backs it up. So they said you need the strength, but you need that endurance as well. But again, it's like coaching a fighter to control himself, not just the fear side of things of flinching away and shelling when they're under attack. Is also when they've hit someone and if they think they've injured a fighter, is going absolutely crazy, go headhunting and get themselves knocked out. There was another fighter of ours, Tucker, and he was famous for it. He would feign an injury and he'd go on the ropes and as soon as they come in, he'd be like, bombogram, wham! And he'd just wait for him, just draw him in because he was a Matt Moe, he was a good boxer, machine gun boxer. So, but again, he was if he hadn't have knocked his opponent out in the first 3 rounds, he would struggle in the later rounds because he would give everything for that first 3 rounds. So if he hadn't caught him cold as such, he was done.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of my fighters fought in Thailand on a big Hong Kong show thing. I think he was fighting a Thai. It might have been just recently. Max Muay Thai. It was, and I knew. I don't want to say his name. My lad. And I knew that if he hadn't knocked the Thai out in the first round, he wouldn't have made it. The Thai would have beat him. And it was funny because it was first round knockout. He pulled the guy's guard down. It was stuff we practice all the time. As you say, repetition. He walked in, pulled the kid's guard down, hit him with an elbow, knocked him out. And I when I saw it, I thought, thank God for that. Because if this had gone the day, and I told my fighter this, and we all laughed, he laughed as well. And he knew it was true because he used to gas out by the second round. And it's about knowing your limitations, isn't it? I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. You know, you should be able to go 5 rounds easily, Absolutely. You know. But if you do know your limitations, then you have to work within them. And a good coach will spot that, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Like with Tucker, we knew his game plan. We knew the best way for him to fight. Ian was similar, but he had the endurance, so he could do it for the 5 rounds. And Paul Martin was the same. His commitment, his stamina was unbelievable. His problem was he was so stocky but so short. So he was fighting, I think, a weight category or 2 heavier than me, but he was shorter than me. So he always struggled with the height.
Yeah.
You know? And as much as we tried to get him to lose that weight, because of his natural frame, he was sort of an endomorphic frame, naturally very muscular, it was difficult for him to lose that extra couple of pounds. But we knew his fight style, and we catered for it. You know,
so a typical training session, okay, because we know what it is in Thailand. We've briefly talked about that, and it is very different because we have to cram, as it were, 6 hours into a 2-hour session, and sometimes only 4 or maybe 3 times a week for training.
Yeah.
How do you do that, Justin? How do you work that out? How do you schedule it?
I mean, it depends on the fighters as well, all the people in the camp. I mean, specifically for fighters, we would have fighters classes, the same as yourself. You would have a class where you wouldn't normally teach these sort of basics to, not that they were learning secret occult martial art. Right. I mean, I spent 35 years and no one's taken me one side yet and taught me any secret occult martial arts.
No.
That's Hollywood, that is.
Yeah.
So, but we would train them differently. The intensity would be there right from the get-go. Even with the play sparring, it would go up a little gear, but still no gloves, no shin guards, technique, time and distance, shin guards on for the sparring sessions. Mm-hmm. But we would expect them, when I got to the gym, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'd be there first, and I'd been out for the run. I'd either go with them or, I would have beaten them to it. So they're warmed up, they're in the gym, we warm up, so we're not wasting too much time on the stretching. And because that was something else I noticed in Thailand, obviously because of the nature of the country, the temperature wise, and the Thais themselves are quite sort of naturally flexible and bendy, because they're quite demure in stature as such. Yeah. They don't bother stretching, they don't stretch. It's like, right, that's okay, let's fight. And that's it.
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, when I first went to Thailand, I just noticed how I didn't really need to stretch anymore because the muscles were all warm and loose anyway.
Yeah.
It's different in South Wales in the valleys, isn't it, in the middle of December?
Absolutely. You've got ice on the inside of the windows in the gym.
Yeah. So obviously you have to warm up and then stretch a little bit as well.
Obviously with the things you teach in a lesson, the stances, whatever, that's already known. That foundation's already there. So you start with that with a lesson and you can get into the intensity. And I would always start with, 1-to-1. Right, this is the techniques we're going to be working on. This is how you're going to defend these techniques. And we do that for sort of 30, 45 minutes. To get the timing and distance right, then we'd go on the bags and the pads to get the speed and power up.
Yeah.
Then we would take it all apart again and spar using these. Right, we're going to spar using these techniques. So it was almost right. I know what you're going to throw, and this is what I'm going to throw, but done at a pace. Like I said, no gloves, so there's no big head shots.
Yeah.
No gloves, no shin guards on, so no one's throwing big kicks either, because a shin-to-shin contact is not for the faint-hearted, even in play sparring.
No. You've got to be careful, haven't you?
Absolutely. So it slows the boys down. It made them so much more accurate. And once you've got that accuracy, then you go freestyle in the ring with them, freestyle pad man. I mean, yourself, I mean, if you've ever done freestyle pad work with Tony Myers, it's when he was training the GB team that we went to Ireland.
Yeah.
I'd travel up and stay with him for the weekend and train with him. And I literally, before and through driving home, I'd be so exhausted because it's not like pad work. You are literally fighting the pad man. And if you drop your guard, you'd be put on your ass.
Yeah. And that's how we should be.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, pad men in Thailand are worth their weight in gold. They're usually ex-fighters. Yeah. But, freestyle pad work, it's not just good for the fighter, it's good for the coach as well, because it really engages the top twins, because you can't switch off. Otherwise, you'll be on the front of the cameras as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, finding a good pad man in the UK, you get guys who maybe been training a couple of years, have had a few fights, maybe even 15, 20 fights, but that appreciation of how to use the pads effectively just doesn't seem to be there. It takes time, doesn't it? It's a skill set.
Absolutely. And that was something, again, when I come back, and one of the ways I changed my training, because it was very robotic and very sort of staccato. I like to make my training reactive. So the boys have got a trigger. They react to it, whether it's a visual, audio, or an actual physical trigger. So it makes their training reactive, and it's making them better fighters. And even the boys in sparring who've got no real aspirations of fighting or possibly haven't got the ability to take it any further than a sparring. I mean, everyone's taught kick, punch, knee, elbow. Everyone's pretty much taught the basics the same. But when that person uses it in a sparring situation, it becomes unique to that individual. Everyone's like a snowflake. I mean, sometimes, I'm a big believer, everyone can learn off everyone. Sometimes a boy will come to the gym, you'll train for a little while, jump in the ring sparring, and I'll watch him. I think, how the hell did he do that? How did he land that kick? And you'll watch him, that's brilliant. Right? And We're going to learn. The rest of us are going to learn how he did that, because what he did was natural him. It was unique to him.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. He caught everyone with that kick. So we're all going to work on it.
Which is it's a stylistic thing, isn't it? It's
absolutely. Like I said, everyone's unique. Everybody, you know, lots of similar styles, but everyone, when they use those techniques in a sparring situation, it becomes unique to that individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And like you say, you know, you train, we're more or less all training the same in the camp, in the gym. And then you look at the fighters, because obviously I've had experience of that. And I'll have a fighter who's very technical and very fit. I'll have a guy who's a counter fighter, he's very fit. I'll have another guy who's just aggressive, loves to move in quickly straight away, but he's fit. The key thing is that they've all got the same high level of stamina, no matter what, you know?
Fitness. Like I said, there was two things I was taught very early on, and I believe it was by your good self. When it comes to fighting, be fittest. When it comes to self-protection, be first. And
Yeah. Did I say that? Did I? Oh.
Yeah.
I'll just write that down. That's going to be my next blog post.
And it is when it comes to fighting, be the fittest. When it comes to self-protection, be first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, my boys, and even in Cwmbran, within Phraya Pichai, had a good reputation for being a very, very fit club. If you're going to come and train with us, and we've had boys popping in from here, there, and everywhere, and at the end of the sessions, they're hanging out their ass, and like, wow, that was one of the toughest sessions I've ever had. And that was
the thing is with you as well, Justin, what I've noticed is, you know, I don't know how long it'll last, mate, because my body's falling apart now, but you have to be involved in it as well, don't you? So when the coach is on talking about the pads, he's on the pads. You know what I mean? In Thailand, it's different because the coach can usually stand back and he can trust the pad men. But would it be fair to say we can't really trust the pad men because we really know what we're doing?
I think, especially in this country as well, and people expect this from you. It's sort of lead by example. I mean, I still train 6 times a week. I don't have to train, and there's some.
Oh no.
You know, some of my sessions are just I'll just go for a 10K run on a Monday, but that's like moving meditation for me. It's about mental toughness. I do a 10K run over the mountain, regardless of the weather. You know, whether it's summer, winter, autumn. You know, pitch black, head torches on, and I'm off. And that was something that was instilled in me when I was fighting. You know, if the weather's bad, thinking, oh, do I fancy going out for a run? And in my head, I would always think my opponent's out running in this, so I am. And I've instilled that in my fighters as well, and they all subscribe to it. They all have that mental toughness, which, you know, I'm not slagging the youth of today off, this Generation X, but it's like 6 weeks I've been training. Why aren't I world champion? You know,
Yeah. Well, there's this desire to be like,
and there's no mental toughness.
Yeah, to photograph every single training session and stick it on Instagram or something. Look at me training. Look how fit I am. And I sometimes wonder, you know, why do you do this? You know, I mean, personally, if I was fighting now, I wouldn't want my opponent to know anything about my training.
That was the great thing. I grew up in the world before social media and YouTube. So, very few videos of my fights anyway. And again, this is something I learned in Thailand. You know, you can only control what you can do. You can't control your opponent. So why bother looking? Because I would change my style of fight. Like you said, you've got a fighter, go forward fighter. You've got a counter fighter. You've got an evasive fighter, and then you've got what they call a tricky fighter, someone to put it all together. So one round he's attacking, second round he's defending, third round he's evading, fourth round you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, so and in Thailand they give very little instruction really to the fighter in the corner. They're like, well, you're fighting him. You know, fight what's in front of you. Because
you should be able to trust your fighter to get on with it.
Absolutely.
And that's something I was going to talk about, because I know, as well as being a coach, you've refereed as well. And as a referee, and probably a lot of people don't know this unless you've refereed, you're not just standing there twiddling your thumbs in between rounds. I spend time listening to the different corners. And I mean, come on, what have you heard? I can tell you what I've heard in these different corners. Just makes me smile, you know? I
mean, it's amazing. I wish I'd done the referee and judges courses when I was fighting, not at the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
So much. And of course, I pass that on to my fighters, you know, help them understand that. But again, you stand in the corner, you're watching the fighters, making sure no one's taking anything illegal. They're using ice sprays. So you're watching. You're not just standing there looking around. You're actually monitoring the corners, and I'm also listening to what they're saying. It was our artillery camp. I was refereeing a fight down in my seg. One of our top fighters, Lindsay. She was fighting a girl from Bristol way, from the
world champion status, world champion fighter.
And she's world champion. You know, she is world champion. It was in her early days of fighting, and Lee was giving her instruction in the corner, and I was stood there thinking, he's going to get her knocked out. That's an absolutely completely wrong thing to be saying. Don't tell her that. And luckily Lindsay had the fitness and the strength and the desire, and went out and won the fight. But I said to Lee afterwards, I said your instruction was shocking. I said it was terrible. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. He said, he said next time the fighters go, he said, come with me and show me how to do it. So we had a few lessons. I had a bit of instruction with him. So the next time we went away to fight, I went with him. I said, right, this is your corner, this is your setup. You're the one that gets in the ring and speaks to Lindsay. No one else does. Yeah. So she's only hearing your voice. Yeah. You're watching the time. You're watching the other corner and seeing what they're telling her. We're all watching the fight together. So we'll have a conversation out here. We'll look for her successes, her weaknesses, and the same for her opponent. Then we'll pass it on to Lee. Lee will get in the ring and Lee will give the instruction. 10 seconds before the second's out, what are they telling her? Because a good coach will stand in front of the fighter so the other corner can't see him. That's right, yeah. Some people don't, and it blows my mind. I mean, geez, this is basics. So you know, all right, they're telling her, they're massaging her leg or his leg is getting very badly bruised, it's whelped up. They've got marks on their ribs, they're treating this injury, and they're telling them to go for this. And sometimes they tell them to go for the Hail Mary, right? So they're going to come out, boxing, evade, just stand off them. So passing on these instructions to Lee, and Lee picked up, fair play, he's a clever boy. Yeah, he is a clever boy. Not many fights himself, but he picked it up brilliantly. So over the course of sort of 12 months, the next time then I was in the ring reffing his fighters, I was listening to him in the corner and his instruction, and it worked like clockwork. He had the luxury of having Carl Price, and Carl Price as well. All credit to him. You know, he's been around a lot longer than me, if that's possible. Yeah. He was like, this is brilliant. This is brilliant instruction. He said, why have we never been taught this? And I said, well, you're new to the fight game. This is not, you don't get taught this in lessons because it's only really fighters need to know it. Yeah. I mean, Lee had me down a few times doing a session after. And it's completely after a seminar. Yeah, I've done a few seminars up there for him as well. And it's a completely different seminar because you're in with a completely different mindset. You haven't got to wet nurse anyone, right? It's a striking art, you're going to get hit. Got to break a few eggs and make an omelette, deal with it. And the amount of instruction you're giving that corner is minimal, isn't it? Absolutely. Keep it same as self-protection. Keep it basic, keep it simple. Yeah. The more basic and simple it is, the more effective it is. Like in Thailand, they'll drill. Well, and I'm sure you've heard this. I was standing in a corner up in Scotland in Glasgow a few years ago now, refereeing a fight. And what the blue corner was given overload in terms of information. You know, do this, do that. Then when he does this, you do that. Then when he does this, you do. And the kid was sitting there like that, like in a trance, like, I can't take this all in. And the other corner, I sort of earwig to the other corner, the red corner, and it was brilliant. He was going, just hit him, just hit him. When he comes, hit him. And the kids are going, what? and it was the oddest fight. I've seen a few like that, obviously, but it was the oddest fight I've ever seen because neither corner knew essentially what they were doing, you know? The funniest thing I've seen as well is, and it happens really often, is it'll take 2 or 3 rounds before the fighter or the corners have realised they're fighting a southpaw. All the instruction they're giving their fighter, he's walking every left hand and left leg. This fighter, I'm like, and sometimes it's one of one of Stingy's boys, and I'm sitting there in the corner. I'm like, just look at his stance. But again, once I pointed this out to Lee, every time it literally 10 seconds into the fight, southpaw, circle left, and that would come from Stingy, and his fighter would adapt because obviously they've trained for it. Yeah. But for years they would miss it, and I've seen it so many times, and really experienced fighters and gyms and corners and coaches, round 3 before they realise
exactly before. I remember Colin Armstrong, one of our fighters.
Yeah, Colin, yeah.
I remember Colin, he wasn't the best at taking instruction sometimes, but he was a good fighter, and he had a big heart. I mean, he was a rough diamond, really. He was a diamond in the rough that we would keep chiseling away at, and we didn't get the best out of him until towards the very end, when he was getting too old and had to retire, and he moved on. But I remember saying to Colin, the guy's got after the first round, I said, the guy's got no footwork, keep going forward, he'll fall over. And Colin's like, what do you mean? I said, just keep going forward, he'll fall over, because he has no footwork. Because I noticed in the first round, the guy had no real balance or stance. And Colin moved in, a couple of punches, a couple of kicks, the guy literally tripped and fell over. And I looked at him and nodded, and he went, and that's all he did. So he just kept the pressure on the fighter, because he had no good his footwork was bad. It was shocking. And sometimes that's all it takes. You just notice that one little thing about the fighter, and that can dictate the way the fight's going to go, particularly in the eyes of the judges. Now, you've just mentioned something which I think is really vital. You said, I wish I'd done the judging referees courses when I was, or before I'd get to a high level in fighting.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Simply because you know how to deal with the ref. You know what the ref expects from you, and always stay on the good side of a ref. I mean, I've disqualified people from the corner. We've had conversations about, and it's happened a couple of times where the corner was so belligerent, disqualified, and then the fighter sat there, no one giving them water, no one giving them any instruction, sat on their own, and obviously it all implodes then.
Yeah.
But it's what the judges are looking for as well. What scores the most? It doesn't have to be a super powerful technique. If you hit them in the right spot and it's effective, bang, big score. So you don't, as a fighter, then you tend not to injure yourself in trying to smash away into an opponent. You sort of dissect them.
A good fighter knows if they've won that round or not. Absolutely.
Like I said, when I won my British title fight, I won the first 2 rounds. According to the commentary, mine I was having a caning. But that's K-Star venue for you. I lost the 3rd round, and I knew I'd lost the 3rd round. He caught me with a wonderful left hook to the body. And I thought, oh, that's what my liver tastes like. And I knew, because it took me probably a good 20 seconds to re-engage in that fight. And that's a long time in a 3-minute round. But I knew then because of my fitness and conditioning, I won the last 2. So I lost 1 round. But again, as a fighter, you will score the round. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah, that's, 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. Bam. You will know what you're scoring. Yeah.
Being honest with yourself, isn't it?
The point and score them back. That's and that's what it is. And when you're fighting at that level, it is like physical chess. Yeah. They'll score a point, you'll counter or block, or you'll come straight back. Right? He scored there, but I've scored back, so that's null. And then I've scored a point, he didn't counter, he didn't come back with anything. That's a point for me. So, and you would score you'd score the round yourself. So when you're sat in the corner, like after my British title fight, I was sat there. I knew I'd won the fight. I knew I'd won. And it wasn't bravado. It wasn't ego. It was just confidence in ability.
Was fighting a Yogi, an old friend of yours who used to fight quite a couple of times.
Yeah, he was a real good boy, Yogi. Real good boy.
Yeah, strong fighter back in the day.
Strong fighter. Like I said, I mean, I broke his leg in the fight. And fair play, he fought 5 rounds. When exactly it happened, fractured or whatever, when it actually happened, no one knew. But for the post-fight interview, he had to be carried from ringside in front of the Sky cameras to have his post-fight interview. I remember it was quite funny because obviously it wasn't live, so they interviewed me and they said, well, you look confident. I said, well, I felt clearly my shots were more hurtful and cleaner landing, the usual bravado. And then they interviewed him and he said, oh, well, I clearly thought I won the fight. I laughed. I said, shut up. I said, you want to be carried over here? And they're like, Justin, could you just be shut up? Can we do that again, please? Yeah. So I'm there sniggering when he says, oh, well, clearly I thought I won the fight. But the good thing about a good fight is a good rematch, which never happened, unfortunately.
No,
that was all to do with politics behind the scenes. It was
and that's something that unfortunately the sport it's got even worse now with the political positions. People are vying for positions. You've got so many promoters and promotions.
And they're so unscrupulous.
Yeah.
They'll put anyone on a fight. It's ridiculous. And area titles. I mean, I remember Lindsay. She's British champion, Commonwealth champion. She's got a world, eye on the world title coming up. And they wanted to go and fight to defend this Southwest area title. And she said, "What do I do?" I said, "Chuck it in the bin." I said, "Southwest area.
It's not worth anything."
I said, "Do you want to go back to that level?" I said, "That's taking 3 steps back." I said,
that's stupid advice.
I said, "Let it go." I said, "Let him vacate it." And she said, "Really?" I said, "Vacate it." I said, it was like me for the Welsh side. I always wanted it, but when I got to a level where they offered it to me, it would be like going back 2 or 3 levels, and that's not arrogance. That was just
common sense. Why get injured for a Southwest title?
A Southwest area
You could be
title.
training with your eye on the big prize. You know what I mean?
Exactly, and that left her free to then to focus on the world title, which she has.
The chances are, when you're fighting somebody who's less experienced, and this can happen, can't it? You're fighting somebody who's less experienced on a Southwest title with a less experienced referee, possibly, and less experienced judges. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah,
but it's highly likely that she gets injured, and that's the end of her career, and she can never go for that world title.
It can happen. It happens. I mean, you probably see it in your gym. I get it in my gym when you've got novices and they're sparring for the first time.
Oh, dangerous.
And they're deadly because you've got to take it easy on them, but without getting your head knocked off, because they want a piece of you. And they're just so clumsy, and they're such a maverick. With a normal fight, everything right. If I step here, I'm going to do this. They're going to move there. I can close them off. And novice fighters just don't do it.
I remember this happening a few years ago. We're training some guys, and there's this young lad. He didn't come for very long, but he'd been a kickboxing champion of some kind. And I said, "Yeah, you can spar with the guys, but you go light because I don't want them getting injured. They've got a fight coming up." And of course, he goes steaming in, and he tried to hit one of my fighters with an elbow. I mean, fortunately, he was really crap. But I got really angry with him and put him against one of my other fighters who wasn't fighting and let him kick the shit out of him. And that's the danger of having novices with highly experienced people, because they're clumsy, essentially.
Yeah.
And they panic and sometimes think, I'm going to go really hard. Yeah, and the idea is not to try and kill each other.
Just floats a kick up and he goes, and the foot comes round straight on your elbow, two broken metatarsals.
That's the end of the training. That's the end of the fight. That's the end of your title shot.
That's it. And that can easily happen. So I said that to Lindsay. I said, you're far too experienced for this level now.
Oh, yeah.
Big kick, and she did.
You shouldn't have even considered it.
But she had about 4 or 5 belts anyway, so it was a little bit of ego sneaking in as well, because the belts were up on the wall, and it was everyone who came to see, and they wanted photos with it. And she, let it go.
Let it go. At the end of the day, it's more important.
And she's like, "What?" She said, "But I've achieved it." I said, "Yes, you have."
Yeah, you've done it. You don't need it. That's like taking your driving test again once you've done it.
Yeah, I've been driving.
Go back there.
I'll try it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. No, you don't need to. Yeah. Let's do advanced driving next. Oh, but I want to do my other test. No. Now, So the fight game's a funny thing, isn't it? And you've been in it a long time now, from being very young. And you've had a lot of fights, professional fights in Thailand and obviously in the UK.
So 22 pro fight. I don't count the novice fights or the C class.
No, you had a lot of them.
It was C class. And interclubs went around when we started. It was in you go.
In you go, yeah. They were funny old days. I remember an interclub at your place, and I was refereeing, and I think we had 3 people got cut, if I remember.
Oh yeah, I think Key was on
that. There was somebody got cut there, somebody got cut here.
All head. I think his opponent, he led with a head anyway. It was all head. I think there was like 3 people had to go off to Neville all to have a few stitches.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the early days of it. Yeah, that was crazy. That was. I remember refereeing and going, "My God, what's happening here?"
But it was just
more blood than I've ever seen. I've seen less blood in fights in Thailand where they're using elbows, And I just put it down to the Valley boys. You know what I mean?
The Welsh. I would tell you what is
the Welsh.
Those Valley boys.
I don't know. They come in out of the pit. Out of the steel mill, straight from the foundry into the ring.
Pit ponies. They come from underground once every week, and they run around.
And this is another thing, just one more thing on the fighters, sort of the fighting scene. Back in the 80s and 90s, when people sort of had jobs, they still managed to keep their job, hold on to their jobs and still train. Now, quite a lot of guys that I have don't work in the same way we used to work, you know, like hard physical jobs.
Yeah.
And yet they find it difficult to go out for a run in the morning. Just an example, Ben Bates, scaffolder, good old Ben, right? For the fighters class, he used to run 8 miles to get to my gym, then train, and then run back home. And he'd do that 5 nights a week because he was fighting. And during the day, he'd be out scaffolding, which is a hard physical job.
Grafting.
Proper graft. And and I'd get guys who were at the university. Oh, that's heavy pens, you know, heavy pens. And they'd say, oh, well, I've had a really long day in the library. And Ben used to just sort of look at them. A hard day in the library. That's why you're not training. Well, if you're not training, you're not fighting. It's as simple as that, you know.
Exactly. But that mental toughness is like I said, Generation X. They just haven't got it. I'm probably being a bit unkind. There are ones that have it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I got one or two boys in the gym, and that's between the 2 clubs we got in Cwmbran.
Yeah.
1 or 2 boys that have got it. And they got that mental toughness. They got that. I will do what it takes, whether it's training, whether it's fighting, you know, whether it's getting up at 6 o'clock to do the run before work.
Yeah, absolutely. In the pouring rain, like you said.
Yeah, and you could tell. I mean, in Thai boxing, you could tell the people who've cheated their training. It's something you cannot cheat your training. You jump between, and anyone who jumps between those ropes deserves a medal in my book. It is so tough. You know,
including the referee.
I haven't been knocked out yet as a ref.
I have. I've been knocked down by an American in Thailand. Yeah. If he ever sees this and listens, he knows who he is. Guy called Alex. Boom, American team. Big left hand. Boom, right on my jaw. As I went like that, chock. I didn't even get the chip out. Boom, straight in the head. And all the Thais, about 5,000, 6,000 Thais in this stadium, all cheering. Probably more. Oh, and it was filmed as well. So somewhere I was knocked on my backside, you know.
There's twice. There was once in my stag, and Carl Price was in the corner with Lee. And I don't know whose fight it was. It might have been Lindsay's fight. And the second round, because I always make sure the fighters are right arm's length apart before I start.
Yeah.
I made the mistake once of letting them come in. And as I'm saying chalk, I could see the glove in the corner of my eye. And I just pulled my head out of the way by a millisecond. So I stopped to give her a ticking off.
Yeah.
And Carl said, if she did, you would knocked you out. It would have been on YouTube by the time you hit the floor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it would have been, yeah. Instantly. Boom.
There's another one down in Cardiff.
250 quid on
absolutely. This is
a certain TV program.
Yeah. It was some reffing in Cardiff, and the guys had a little bit of afters after the first round. So I was quite keen on them. So as soon as the bell went, I jumped in between them to break them. And this guy, a boy from Cardiff, threw a right hand. It was the best punch he's thrown all fight, and it was square on the jaw. It was like, whoa, hold on to the ropes a minute. Back in the corner, telling him off.
Yeah, but he didn't knock you out. Yeah, not that tough.
Oh my goodness! But I seen the flash.
Yeah, you going back to Thailand as well, right? And you mentioned something earlier on. You know, about how there's differences between obviously training in Thailand and training here. We have to have a different structure because we can't train 6 hours a day. It's not possible. You also said one of the lads, he went off to Thailand to train after being successful fighter in this country.
Yeah, again, I was like I said, people want to go to Thailand. It's the sort of mecca of our sport. Everyone, you know, the karate guys and jiu-jitsu guys want to go to Japan, and kung fu boys want to go to China. So it's like everyone at some point there's a pilgrimage to training, but not all the gyms in Thailand are good.
No.
So again, it was you know, no names. One of our fighters went off, and he was a real successful fighter, and probably trained with me 5 days a week. By the end of it, for 5 years, went to Thailand, came back, and in under a month, they had completely undone all the hard work we put into him. He had 2 or 3 bad knockouts, and then that was it. I never saw him again. Never saw him, never heard of him again.
Yeah.
Vanished off the face of the earth.
Well, what I say to the guys, you know, if you're going to go to train in Thailand, speak to me before you go, because I've had a few guys who've gone to sort of like, they've just gone to Thailand on spec, and they've ended up in a tourist gym.
Yeah.
They've got photographs on Instagram saying how great it is and all of that. And I think, well, with respect, how do you know that? You've only been training a year, you know, and they come back, as you say, they've just taken their money, basically. Smiled, taken their money, hit them on the pads a few times very badly, and then said, no, do this, do that, and undone all the hard work, you know.
And I mean, the first fight he had when he came back, and we thinking, you know, we're expecting great things from him. He's learned so much in Thailand. He's gone out and he's completely undone it, and he's doing everything that we're telling him to do. He's doing the complete opposite. I mean, what are you doing? Oh, well, I learned this in Thailand, but it's not working. Stop it.
Yeah.
Remember what you learned in Wales?
Yeah. And much better when you learned it in Wales.
Absolutely. Remember what you learned in Wales? Now in Thailand, come to Wales.
Come to Wales. Not as warm, but hey, we've got some good Thai boxing. So, let's put the Thai boxing to one side, because in the previous podcast we briefly chatted about how you got into working on the doors.
Yeah.
I think there might have been one or two stories that are worth sharing that are quite funny.
Some of them, yeah. I mean, 15 years on the door, it was a hell of an experience.
What was your worst experience on the door?
We had a 30-man brawl.
30-man brawl.
30-man brawl. And I mean, I was very fortunate. I would cherry pick my doorman as well. I mean, I've actually sacked doorman halfway through the night. You are an absolute garbage. You're causing trouble. You're out. And once I did it, and actually the pub was about, it was like a little disco bar, but the pub was about to go off royally because of this doorman strutting around thinking he owned the place. I said, right, give me a badge, paid you up, you're out, you're gone.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that to me, watch me. And as he drew his hand back, and as I'm dragging him to the car back by his eyelids, right, put him in his car, right, on your way. You know, because a bad doorman is always they can ruin the setup. But I was very fortunate. I worked with a lot of good boys, guys I would train. I mean, it amazed me. I mean, as a doorman, you probably did as well. I would always have my gum shield in my pocket and my box on. I mean, when I worked the door in Newport, I always wore a stab vest under my jacket.
Oh, did you? Oh, right, yeah.
There's the knife culture down there. The edge weapons in sort of Newport as a new city. It was terrible. Everyone is bleeded. So you had to, being a short ass, you've got to take precautions. But again, the amount of doormen I seen come across because they didn't have a box on. Basics.
Yeah, that is a bit silly, like. We
had a call once. It was a fight in the ladies' toilet. Right, okay. So I'm pretty sure.
In the ladies' toilet.
In the ladies' toilet. So I'm like, okay. Hey! So and the two women are fighting. The one's on the floor, and the one is on top. They're punching hell into it. And these were big ladies, you know, they're Welsh rally girls, so they put the fear into any man.
Yeah.
So I gets in, I grabs the one, takes her off the one on the floor. The one on the floor gets up, she goes, "That's my missus," and she gave me an uppercut. So she's on the floor, she gives me an uppercut straight in the box, straight in the bollocks. Luckily, you probably have to edit that bit out, but luckily I had a box on. She broke 2 knuckles. That's how hard she hit me.
Wow, it's a good job you have the box on.
Yeah, if I hadn't had a box on, I'd have had a kicking from these 2 girls in the toilet, because that would have dropped any man. I mean, she hit me that hard. I had a bruise from the cup line.
Yeah, where it hit you.
Yeah, where she did.
Probably haven't been kicked that hard.
Never. I've been needing.
That's incredible.
Line, never. You know.
Was it a steel box?
No, it was a plastic one. I wish I'd had my steel box.
Imagine if it had been a steel box. My God.
So she hit me hard enough to break 2 knuckles as well. That's how hard she hit me. So, you know, we escorted them out of the pub, and you know, as any doorman would know, extracting a woman from a pub is like trying to put an angry cat in a bath of water.
Yeah. I mean, I know. I've never not had the experience myself, but I know a lot of doormen who have said the same thing. Because as part of you, as a man, you're trying to be careful and a gentleman, and you don't want to, and you're worried about injuring someone, you know. And whether it's right or wrong, you know, it might seem a bit misogynist, but you think, well, it's a woman, so I'm going to have to treat her differently to a man. When in fact, really, yeah, those two were probably fighting tougher than most men fight.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's not misogynistic, but when it comes to door work and sort of self-protection, sex equality goes straight down the middle. You know, you can't look at her as a woman. We've had, you know, in my time on the door, I had six glassing, 6 bottling, 5 were women. You know, they're just...
Oh, right. So you've been bottled by 5 women.
5 women and 1 bloke. Fortunately for me, I was better than they were, and
Yeah.
like myself. But yeah, five women in. 5 women.
That's an odd statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Were these women? Was that because you were trying to get their boyfriend out of the place or their partner or whatever?
They're Welsh Valley girls, so they were fighting.
Oh, they're just Welsh Valley girls. Is this normal? Is it?
Yeah, it's standard. It's.
Well, can you hear that guy? Wales, don't mess with the girls.
Yeah, exactly. You pinch a girl's bottom in Wales, you've got to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, you're going to be a dead man.
We extracted these women, and the one woman actually phoned the police and wanted to press charges for assault. So when I explained how she broke her knuckles, the cop was like, "Stupid cow," and chucked her in the back of the van for the crimes.
So did you have a good relationship with the police?
Not always. That was probably one of the reasons I sort of turned my back on the door work. To start with, the police were absolutely brilliant. But as I said, the door changed so much in 15 years. When I first started, and I only got into it for a bullying incident, and then helped the landlord out of another sticky spot. So started doing it on a regular basis. But it would be one-on-one, they go outside, Queensby rules on the common. And the loser come in, buy the winner a pint, and then the loser be banned for a week. And that was what it was like. But then 15 years later, it's always the man with the gang. There's always 5-on-1, and it's always drug-related,
I think Graham Leggett, who was on doing a podcast, his up last week. He did, just before you did your first one. Graham was talking about, because he did 20 years on the doors in Ayr. Now, Ayre's a small port in the northwest part of Scotland. It's a bit like Wales, to be honest. It's a tough sort of town, fishing port with industry and that. Not dissimilar in some ways to where you live in Cwmbran. And he said the doors changed. The 20 years he was on the door, I think it was the same. He said, we used to have really good relationships with the police. They knew who we were, knew who were the bad doormen, and knew who the good doormen were, and they treat you with a bit of respect. And also, Graham, I don't know whether he had this experience. Graham said he also was able to have contact with other doormen on other pubs, so that all sort of know if one place kicks off and their place was okay, they'd all run to help you. Did that happen in the valleys?
In the valleys, not so much. But in Cwmbran's quite a new town as well. A few little hamlets, but in the 1950s they built a massive central town. So it's probably about 60,000 people in Cwmbran.
Yeah.
So when we first started working the door in this one pub, we were probably the first doorman in the area, and then other pubs. But I knew all the doormen on all the pubs, so I started this communication. If we've had trouble, I'd ring the pub up the road, say, "Listen, we've just kicked out half a dozen guys, or we kicked out a gang of girls.
Yeah,
coming your way," and they would turn up and not be allowed in, and they would return the favour. So there was about 5, and they had a pub watch system as well, which worked really well to start with. But then you have a few landlords that had vendettas against people that would use it as their own personal tool to sort of have a vendetta and ban people from all the pubs in the area. So it started falling apart, because then when the landlord said, "You can't ban this person for that," well, I'm going to let him in my pub. Well, you're on pub watch and I'll let her do it. Well, I am, because I know that this is only done out of spite. It's not done because the person's a menace. So that sort of fell apart. People's egos got involved, and that sort of fell apart. But the doormen in the area looked after each other.
Yeah, that's what Graham.
I've been in other pubs, and something's happened, and the doorman, especially the SIA boys now, DME, they'll give that badge to anybody, and half the boys, I don't think they've even seen a fight, let alone been in one or broken one up.
No, you just have to sort of pass an exam, don't you? There's a written exam.
And it's every 3 years you've got to do this course, and it's more about security, duty responsibilities, first aid, more about wheel clamping. There's nothing in there actually about how to break up a fight. There's do's and don'ts, like to touch them here, touch them there. But in the real world, that doesn't happen. Yeah,
does being a Thai boxer help you on the doors? There was a question on the live stream that we did last Wednesday. It was one of the guys who was saying, is Muay Thai any good in a street fight sort of thing? Now, I know working the doors is not the same as a street fight, but you're probably going to see a lot more violence on the doors than you will ever walking the streets, because the tendency will be to avoid those situations. But obviously, as a doorman, you're there not to avoid fights, it's to stop them from getting out of hand.
I mean, as a doorman,
and hopefully spotting them beforehand. So
that's the idea. It's by vetting the clientele. You're there to provide a safe drinking environment. You're not there to chat up girls. You're not there to bully people.
Yeah.
And you're not there to fight. You know, like I said,
when it does kick off, like my question, I guess, is has Muay Thai, not just the physical punchy, kicky elbow part of it, but also the psychology of it, you know, that ability to...
Certainly, I can't speak for everybody, but it's certainly helped me, you know, the psychology of it. And again, going back to the fighting, is when you're in the ascendancy, is not to just go in all guns blazing, is to stop and think, assess the situation. Is this guy feigning an injury? Do I need to hit this guy? Do I, you know, and it's having the control of yourself, not just going crazy.
Yeah.
But I know I can beat this person up, so I'm going to do it. You know, like I said, I probably had 6 fights in 15 years. It's probably 6 times where I've gone, my gum shield's gone in, right, you know, we're in it now because it's gone pear-shaped. But that, I would always look at it, that I had bollocks, I hadn't done my job right. If we were fighting, it was because I hadn't done my job right. I'd either let someone in that I shouldn't have, or, you know, there was a situation that had developed so quick that I hadn't seen it, and that was
awareness, isn't it? It's
awareness, absolutely awareness.
And that's the same whether you're fighting in the ring or whether you're fighting in the street, whether you're a bodyguard, whether you're a doorman, a policeman. I
go out for a meal with my young lady, or I'll go out, and I'm walking into pubs. Yeah, I'm looking around. You know, you're doing the sort of walking commentary, but you do it for yourself. I mean, like I said, my mate Murray, he's a big guy. He doesn't need me in his company. He can look after himself. But he says, I always feel so much better when you're around. And not because I'm going to protect him. He said, because I know if there's any trouble or anything, you're going to see it before anyone else.
Yeah.
I don't trust any of these doormen. He said, but because you're in my company, I know. And he said, I can relax. I feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do it, you know, I don't walk around like Kato. I'm not all, you know, waiting for...
No, it's not that, is it? It's just having an open awareness of what's going on around you and not prejudging it. Just
tune into your environment. Like I said, on a Monday, and in the winters, you know, 6 o'clock at night, it's pitch black. I'm running across a mountain, just me and the dogs, a 10K run. But I do that for mental toughness, not because I physically need to do that sort of training. I don't. No. You know, I enjoy it. But it's about training the top 2 inches as well. It's about having that mental toughness.
The top 2 inches. And on that note, training the top 2 inches with Justin Reeks. Now, we're going to have to start to conclude this because we've come to the end of the hour. But I know some really intriguing stuff, particularly about the Thai boxing, the training in Thailand, and of course the work on the doors. And we're going to finish it on that point where we're starting to talk about awareness and being open to things around you, and how that can also affect you, you know, not just in the ring or for the doors, but just generally giving you that mental toughness. That the big word at the moment is resilience, isn't it? You know, you hear this being bandied around in business circles all the time now. I go on LinkedIn, it's about resilience training. It's the new keyword. Last year it was mindfulness. This year it's resilience. You know, I don't know what it's going to be. Probably pandemic next year. I don't know. Oh no, that's now. I'd like to do a third one, right? We haven't even put the first one up yet, but it will be going up, you know, and you'll be watching it now because it's been recorded. I want to do a third one because you're a meditator as well, and you're quite interested in things like philosophy. You know, you're not just a thug. You're a thinking Valley's boy. A rare thing. You know, a thinking Valley's boy. And I want to get you on to talk more about the cerebral things, the top 2 inches, as you called it. So I'm gonna close it there. I'm gonna thank you very much for coming on again, Justin. And I can't wait to do the next one because I know you've got a lot to talk about in terms of, you know, your meditation awareness and how that spills over into sort of normal life. So I'll close the show, guys. Thanks for watching or listening, if that's what you're doing, listening on Podbean. And I want to say thanks very much once more to Justin Reeks. Cheers, pal.
Sawadee Cap.
Hey, Sawadee Cap. Cwmbran Cap.